Before we jump into this episode, I want to give a massive shout out to our amazing sponsor this season, Jo Higgs from Jo Higgs Creative. Jo is a freelance logo and brand designer with over a decade of experience, and she is all about helping female-led businesses stand out and attract their dream clients. Right now, Jo is offering a fantastic free downloadable guide called Building Your Brand. It dives into the basics of branding and how to really boost your brand awareness as a small business owner. Plus, there's a super helpful checklist you can go through at your own pace. You can grab it at www.joannhiggs.co.uk/free download, and I'll make sure to pop the link for that and all the ways to find out more about her in the show notes too. In the meantime though, let's get back to the episode you're here for. Today I'm joined by the brilliant Liz Mosley for a conversation all about content trends, the good, the bad and the overwhelming. We dive into the very real pressure small business owners feel to constantly jump on trends, and together we talk about how to decide which ones are worth your time, why aligning them with your bigger business goals matters, and how to keep the creative process joyful instead of draining. This episode is packed with encouragement, practical insights, and a reminder that your self-worth isn't tied to how well you keep up with what's trending. But before we dive in, if you're new here, hi, I'm your host, Becky McAvoy. I'm a multi-award-winning social media marketer, international speaker, and the dreamer behind Be Heard Socials and the Boss Your Socials Club. I created this podcast to help women like you simplify your life and grow a business on your terms without the overwhelm. If you're ready for some no BS advice, practical tips and honest chats that make social media and business feel lighter and more doable, you're in exactly the right place. Right then, let's get started with this week's episode. Hey Liz, welcome to the podcast. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for having me. This is so fun.
I know, I'm so excited for this because we were just chatting about how I'd asked you, months ago now about this podcast, and then we've had the summer holidays in between, and this is the first thing I'm recording post summer holidays, so I feel a little bit like the new girl at school again.
Honestly, I'm the same. I'm like, what am I doing? I don't even know anymore.
But no, I'm really looking forward to the chat because the reason that I had this came from me messaging you actually, didn't it? Because you'd been talking on your Instagram stories about content trends and why they're not necessarily all they're cracked up to be, and just various different views around content trends. I was like, oh my God, I'd love to talk about that on the podcast. So I'm excited for the conversation, and excited to hear your views on it as well, because you are also someone I just generally really admire the way you approach your business, you approach your content, your socials, all that kind of stuff. And you do try loads of different things. So I'm just really looking forward to hearing your sort of views on, just everything we're going to chat about, really.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be interesting.
Amazing. So before we get into all of that stuff, obviously people have just had a little bit about you in the intro and all that stuff about, like who you are and what you do. But I always like to ask people, like sort of, I guess, a more personal approach to it, but like kind of what your story is in terms of being a business owner, like how it started, what your business is about. Like, is it something you always wanted to do, or did it, like, I just always think it's funny because I completely fell into business by accident. Like, yeah, just a little bit about sort of who you are and what your story is.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I've always been a graphic designer. So I studied that at uni, did that after uni. Hilariously, at that time, like at the start of my career, I almost adamantly didn't want to run my own business. So lots of people on my course, their goal was to set up a studio and their goal was always to work for themselves. And I was like, oh no, I don't fancy that. So I went off and I worked in a studio and I worked in house and I did the 9 to 5 and everything. And I guess for me, the catalyst to working for myself was having kids. I mean, I did start a bit before that. So people started asking me to do freelance stuff, and I started a little side hustle outside of my 9 to 5. So I think deep down, the desire was there, but I just hadn't realized and hadn't articulated that. And then when I had kids, I had started to build up a bit of freelance work, and I just did not want to go back to my job. I wanted to spend as much time with them as possible and be as flexible around them. So we sort of set ourselves up in a situation that I didn't have to go back to my job, and then I could sort of depending on what stage the kids were at, and then I had a second, so that impacted things. I could increase and decrease my workload as needed. And then once my youngest was kind of a bit older, then I was like, right, I'm going to go all in on this. I'm going to run my own business. And now I've got to the point where I'm I don't think I could go back to working for someone else. So it's like a whole, it's a complete change that I didn't expect. But yeah, so I'm a graphic designer, but I specialize in branding for small businesses. But that's so close to like marketing. A lot of marketing stuff comes into it. And I host a podcast called Building Your Brand. And like the whole sort of goal with all of that is to help small businesses with their branding and marketing and to feel more confident about it. So yeah, that's the kind of like the brief history and where I'm at now.
All of that though, because I think it's so true. When I don't even know what point you get to in business or whether there is a time frame on it where you just make yourself completely unemployable, because the idea of ever having to work for someone again. And my husband is a complete opposite. He's like, the idea of running a business literally is my worst nightmare. But
I think that's it. It's very personality dependent. And I think you have the two extremes, don't you? Where like the other for someone else is like totally the worst case scenario. And that's fine. That's like good. Everyone needs to find what they want to do, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I was going to say, and this is what I am terrible at, I do like to go off on a bit of a tangent just because I'm fascinated by people in conversations. But one of the, like I think a lot of women actually, saying sort of like your kids were the catalyst for going, actually, this is probably like a more viable option. And that was kind of what made you start your business. But one of the things I really love about, like, especially on socials, but I think you do it in your podcast as well, actually, is a lot of what I try to do as well is sort of normalizing, like, you are a super ambitious person and you've achieved some incredible things as well. Like in the time that, like, even just in the time that I've known you, do you, and this is nothing to do with what we're going to be talking about, but I'd just be really interested in your sort of thoughts on it. Like, how do you find balance in that? Because I feel like I've spent a lot of the last year trying to step back a little bit, because actually I'm like, no, do you know what? I need a bit more time and I need some more space back. I don't even know whether you have any thoughts on this, because this isn't like, I haven't prepped you for the fact that I was going to ask this at all. But yeah, like, how do you balance that? Because you are doing some incredible things in your business and some great opportunities. But I know, I get the impression from like your Instagram stories and that kind of stuff that you're very similar to me in the way that you also want, like the balance between like, and being present for your kids and that. Like, yeah, I don't even know what I'm asking.
No, I totally get it. Yeah, I mean, I think it's always a bit of a tension, and I think I'm sort of having to take it day by day in terms of like deciding what opportunities are for me and what aren't. Like a couple of years ago, I got offered a job and I had to really, like, on paper, it was like an amazing job, and I had to really weigh up if I wanted to do that or if I wanted to sort of stick with my like current setup. And ultimately I decided to stick with my current setup because I wanted that flexibility of A, being able to go for the goals that I want to achieve, and B, being able to like spend time with my kids and not have to ask anyone's permission. I think, because interestingly, I wouldn't have described myself as like particularly ambitious before I had kids in my career. I think I was sort of like coasting along a little bit. But since starting my own business, and it makes sense because it's like your own thing, isn't it? So then you're like really motivated to make it work. I've definitely felt a lot more ambitious. I think one of the things that helps me, and I feel like I need to acknowledge like the privilege of my situation, is that my husband is self-employed as well. And so that gives us an extra layer of risk, but an extra layer of flexibility as well. So like if I want to go to a conference or travel for work, like he can usually pick up the slack, and then it works both ways. Sometimes like he'll be away doing something really cool and I'll be the one that's like at home making that work. So I think that helps. But I think it, sometimes I have to turn stuff down because that is the reality of like having kids, or I have to like cancel last minute because one of my kids is sick, and that, that's the priority. I think in the past I've given myself a really hard time about that, and I found that really difficult. I think I'm getting better at just like accepting like that is the life that I have chosen, and I'm very happy with that choice. But there are some like restrictions as a result, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I suppose that is pretty much it. It is learning to be okay with it, and this is kind of a separate podcast episode in itself, so I won't talk about it long. But I was thinking about that as you sort of was like, telling your story a little bit. And, like quite a few of my friends were at Ideas Fest at the moment. And that was one of the things that I'd said no to because my eldest had started high school. And even if he hadn't actually, like this time in September, I just find it always really frantic. Like it's my daughter's birthday. And yeah, just as you explained that, I thought it was interesting, isn't it? Because often you can see people doing all these amazing things. And yeah, anyway, sorry, I've gone off on a tangent. That is a slightly separate podcast.
I love it. It's interesting. Yeah.
Which I need to, I'm going to jot that down somewhere to maybe talk about at another time. But back to content trends. So let's get stuck into it. I guess a really good place to start is kind of with the basics, because I think people can probably have different maybe definitions of what a trend even is. So sort of like with the basics, when we say, well, when you say social media trends, what do you actually mean by that? Or what is your kind of definition of that when you're talking about it?
I mean, it's basically just when everybody starts doing something. Yeah, like that is like the basics of it. You know, like someone has created something, loads of people like it, and it kind of takes on a life of its own. It becomes this much bigger thing that I think the original creator never expects to happen. And then basically people sort of jump on that trend and make content. And there's usually sort of like a style or set parameters. So like we're recording this in September, and one of the big ones of the summer was there was a TV program that came out that called there was a TV series that the new season came out of The Summer That I Turned Pretty. And so loads of people created content in the same style as the graphics from the TV show that were like the summer I ... And then they shared kind of like thoughts, or, you know, like they put their own spin on it. So that was one. We were talking earlier and we mentioned one. There was one that went round that was I Met My Younger Self for Coffee. And it was kind of like this very reflective, deep kind of like content. There was, I mean, a huge one was, I don't know if you remember this was a few years ago now, but like the turning your life into Wes Anderson film. So everyone like used the set music, shot their clips in a particular style, put a particular filter on it, and, you know, did little like roundups of their life. So those are the sort of things. It's where, you know, like someone creates something, it sparks everyone's imagination and they all create something in a similar style, and it kind of goes everywhere.
Yeah, and well, because I was going to say that's kind of how I define it. But when I was thinking about it this morning, and when I was sort of like prepping for the episode and stuff, I was also thinking, I suppose it like absolutely that, but it also goes a little bit wider, doesn't it? Of like I notice with a lot of my members, so like people will start doing, for example, Instagram stories in a certain way. So it's not necessarily like I don't know, like the one that I saw, and I actually think you spoke about this in your solo podcast episodes over the summer, but the get ready with me style, like when somebody's doing a story and then all of a sudden everybody starts doing stories. Like, so it's not even, it's like content.
Yeah, it's not always that specific. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it can be more of a like general way of creating content, or something that you do while you're creating content.
Yeah. Well, as I started to think about that, I was thinking, because I think about like a lot of the questions that I get from my members and that kind of stuff. And I think one of the reasons that I reached out to you, because I really wanted to talk about it, is because like trends can have some brilliant impacts on your business. But also, I think especially for small businesses, it just puts this pressure on people, and it's almost like to jump on them, and if you're not going to, then your business isn't doing what it should be doing on social media. And one of the things I say a lot is like, no, like that's great if you want to do that stuff, if it fits with your business, but actually there's just sort of basics to get right before you even start thinking about trends. Like, do you feel that as a content creator, business owner, whatever you want to say, and do you see that with people? Like, do you think, you know, like that, because we spoke about I Met My Younger Self for Coffee, and I think loads of that, I think some people just really enjoyed it because it enabled them to tell a story they wanted to tell, but I think loads of people jumped on it just because. The other one for me was that it was the I Met My Younger Self for Coffee that ended up boring me to death, and I didn't read a lot of it, and that turning yourself into an action figure doll thing.
Yes.
Really,
but I didn't love that one because it was all AI as well, and so I was like, no, I don't want to see this. Yeah.
I saw loads of people jump on that I was like, oh my God, it's almost having the opposite effect, because I think people are just getting bored of it. So then so again, I've sort of, that there wasn't really a question in that, but do you or did you feel pressure to jump on stuff like that? And do you, with like the people you work with?
Yeah, I definitely feel the pressure. I think the thing that I find interesting is that even when I was a kid, I was like, or not a kid, like a teenager or whatever, I was always late to the trends. Like I was always the person that suddenly realized the trend was happening like about a year afterwards, and then thought, oh yeah, maybe I'll get that pair of trousers, or maybe I'll do this. And so I've always felt like way behind when it comes to trends, just in every area of my life. And so I do feel the pressure, because often by the time I realize that a trend's happening, it's like we're well into it. And actually, it's at the point where it's not that effective to take part of it. I mean, I have so many thoughts about it. And I guess my caveat that I would love to share sort of at the beginning is that I don't want to shame anybody for taking part in trends, because ultimately creating content for your business and marketing your business is hard. And I think you've got, if you find it fun and you enjoy it, like that's great. And if you love a trend and it's right for you, it doesn't matter what I think about it. Like I think that there definitely is pros and cons, and I actually think that it's massively impacted by what type of business that you have. So for example, I think a lot of people think that trends are important because they think going viral is important, and I don't actually think going viral is that important or that beneficial. Having accidentally gone viral, it like did absolutely nothing for my business. Saying that, if I had a product-based business, I think I would feel differently. So the only way that going viral is beneficial is if you have something that people can buy. No, okay, this isn't the only way it's beneficial, but one of the ways that going viral is beneficial is if you have something that people can buy, and also that you have the sort of capacity to fulfill those orders, right? So there's nothing worse than someone going viral, like it wipes out someone's shop, and then it's like months before they can get those products in again, and everyone's really frustrated because they really want to buy them and they can't. So I think there's just like loads of aspects about it like that. So I think people feel pressure because they're like, well, if I want to go viral, I need to jump on trends and I need to do it as quickly as possible. So I think it's what's important to you, like as a business. And I also think it comes back to, and this comes up in pretty much like every aspect of business, everything that I talk about is like, what is your goal? Like, what are your goals with your business? And I think coming back to what the goals are and almost running everything through that filter of like, well, okay, does this help me achieve that goal? Because I think so many of us, you know, like especially if we're like creative, we're like working on our own, like we see all these things going on and we're like, yeah, that looks cool, I want to be part of it. You know, it's that sort of like group mentality that we all have. Like we want to be part of the cool group, we want to be part of what's going on, we want to be like relevant, all this kind of stuff. We want to be trendy. It's almost like this whole thing just triggers like our stuff from being kids, where it's like we want to be in the cool group, we want to be considered trendy. And we're sort of seeing that play out as like grown-ups on like social media. And so I think you do need to come back and ground yourself with like, okay, well, my goal in my business is this. If I do this trend, is that going to help me get closer to that goal? Or am I just doing it because I think it'll be fun? Like doing something for fun is a totally legitimate reason, but you also need to acknowledge that it's probably not going to have that big an impact on like, you know, whether you make money or not. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, no, it does 100%. And there's so much in what you just said that like my brain was going in 100 different directions with thoughts. I think firstly, what you said about always being late to the trend, that's 100% me. And when you use that example of the summer I turned pretty, this summer I watched all 3 seasons in like about 4 days because I was like, oh.
Yeah.
TV shows, like I'm yet to watch Traitors. And it's like all of a sudden, me and my husband are going to start watching it soon, actually. And I know I'm going to end up getting obsessed with it. And I'm like 2-3 years too late for like when we first started talking about it. So I love like what you said around that, because I think that's really true. And actually, one of the things that we were speaking about before we started recording was you and your friend Hannah did a post that actually went really well, didn't it? Like jumping on a trend, and it was the one of you looking like bored. Really bored at the conference. But actually, you'd done that quite a way after the trend had actually taken off, hadn't you? But the post still did really well.
Did really well. I think if you're considering jumping on a trend, there's like a few things to factor in. I know you feel the same as me about this. I think unless you get on the trend right at the very start, people get bored really quickly because that's all they see in their feed. And so then it's just another post like that. You know, like people, it just gets boring so far. So unless you're like right at the start, I'm like, is it a good idea to jump on it? I'm not sure. I think the other thing is that people try and like shoehorn their business and their content into it when it doesn't actually fit. So not every trend is going to be relevant to your business or not every trend can kind of be like shoehorned into what you talk about and what you're about. So there's like those things to factor in. The reason I think that our one ended up doing quite well is that it was quite a long time after the trend had kind of gone everywhere. So people had got over feeling bored about it, and then they enjoyed it again, like for the first time. And some people hadn't even seen it. So to them, it was like something completely new. It was also a trend that hadn't gone totally huge. So I think it was quite big on TikTok, but it never went like big on Instagram, which was where we posted it. But I think the reason it worked well for us is because it worked so well with both of our personalities. So it like really fitted in with our sense of humor. It fitted in with our dynamic as friends, which like we do a lot of content together and we share about our friendship. So I think people like know that dynamic a bit. And I think because it was like event specific, that also helped, because then all the people who were at the event like enjoyed it because they were there. And a lot of them saw us doing it and were like, what the hell are they doing? And then they were like, this is what you were doing. Now we get it. Because it looked completely ridiculous when we were doing it.
Also, I was going to say the same thing, to be honest, because I don't actually know whether I did see the original trend, but I saw either, like you said, I just don't remember it or whatever. But what I loved most about it, and I don't know, Hannah, to be fair, but I know, like you said, you share a lot about your friendship and that kind of stuff. And what I think worked really well was just that it did show your personalities. And for the kind of businesses you've both got, actually, that's quite important on social media. So actually, not only was it just a funny reel to sort of get involved with, I can see ways that benefited your business, not necessarily like all of a sudden
financial,
everybody's you're like a real financial hit or anything, but just in terms of your brand, like, and what you do, it just showed you too.
And I think that's the thing to come back to, right, is again, what are your goals and what are you trying to achieve with it? So I don't think either of us went into it thinking, oh my goodness, we did not make this to get clients. Like, we didn't go into it thinking, oh, this is going to get us loads of clients. But both of us like want to be seen at events. We want to do more public speaking. And what I think it did help is that the organizers of the event, it was Atomicon, they saw it, they noticed it, they enjoyed it. They know who we are now, like, which is going to help us, you know, in the future, potentially, if we want to be involved in that event, or, you know, like, it got us on people's radar, I think, in a way that it might not have done if we hadn't done it. So, and I think exactly like you said, like, it helped build our personal brands. It helped people get to know us, like the person behind the brand. And I think that is really beneficial. So there was loads of really good things that came out of it, not necessarily financial, which is fine. Like, that doesn't have to be the goal.
Well, I was going to say the other thing that you said that I really liked was about, and I say this a lot, on the podcast actually, and to my members and whatever, whenever they're asking me a question, one of the first things I'll ask is, what is your goal? And often people can fire various different things at me. I was like, okay, but what's your primary goal right now? And sometimes with the people that I work with, and lots of people that I imagine listen to this podcast, some of the goal is actually, like I say, like, getting content out there is a goal in itself. Like, so it doesn't have to do anything. If you just get more used to using video editing tools or schedulers or whatever it might be, and the post gets posted, like, that can be a goal in itself. And that, you know, with trends can sometimes be an easier way to do that, because it might have a template or it might have whatever. And I think if you struggle with that, like, and actually I think that in itself is a really worthwhile goal, to jump on something, because the more you do it, the more you get used to it, and then you start creating various different content and your confidence builds and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love what you said around the goal, but, like, you know, and I think it's thinking about like that. Because I can sit here. I also love what you said about, just because whatever we think doesn't mean that you shouldn't do something, because I can say that I was bored to tears of that. I met my younger self for coffee and I didn't end up reading a lot of them. But equally, some businesses, some brands, that trend worked really well for, because if they're people that, I don't know, like, for example, like coaches or people like that are helping people with different things, that actually shows, you know, their own progress and things like that. And it builds maybe credibility in them that it wouldn't necessarily do if I was posting it. So I think it's always thinking about the impression you want to give off. But equally, if you use that trend and you went, if I spoke to my younger self, and I don't know what you could have put in there that would be that bad, but it reflects something really bad about you or something like that could have a negative impact on your brand. That's, I guess, really what you need to be thinking of, isn't it? Is like, what's my goal? But also, how does this make me look like when I post it?
Yeah, totally. And this like comes back to branding and personal branding, you know, like we're all curating this kind of like reputation online. And so it's thinking strategically, you know, like how do I build the reputation that I want to build? And it's still authentic. Like I'm not saying pretend to be someone else that you're not online, but it's sort of like strategically choosing like what you're going to share and what you're not going to share that's relevant to your business. And so yeah, like some trends are going to work really well for some businesses and some trends are going to not work well for them, you know, but will work great for somebody else. And I think over time, it's like having that discernment of like, is this trend going to serve me? Is this trend going to like have the effect that I want it to have? Or is it not? I think, you know, like one of the things that I am wary about with trends is that you're kind of like aligning yourself with a whole group of people that's kind of out of your control. So like say a trend comes along, and I can't think of a really specific example for this, but sometimes what happens on the internet is like this wave of something happens and everyone thinks it's really positive, and then someone gives a critical spin on it and suddenly we're all like, oh no, actually that's really bad. And if you've jumped on that trend and it suddenly becomes like bad, then you have aligned yourself with this group of people that are now like there's a negative sort of like perception around it. Like you're potentially aligning yourself with other businesses that maybe don't align with your values, or you know, like don't think the same way as you. I mean, often with the just sort of very trivial ones, that's not that, you know, the risk of that is like a lot lower. But I think that is something to be wary of, like almost like knowing where the trend has come from, like why it's happening, you know, like what is that social moment that it's like speaking into, and just like checking in that that is aligned with you as a person and your business, because you don't want your business to be associated with something that isn't aligned and that is going to give people a negative perception of you. I think like that this often comes out more with sort of like political trends, or you know things that are a lot more emotive. It's sort of less with those kind of like silly ones. And I think, you know, as I mentioned before, it does depend on your type of business. Like often when a really big brand jumps on a trend, it works really well from them because it's kind of unexpected. You know, like if you see like I don't know if you saw Currys did that trend where it was like, we got our Gen Z member of staff to write the script, and then they'd get like an older was it Gen Z? Which one's I've lost track.
Yeah, it was Gen Z, I think, but it was where the older person read
it. Yeah. And like, I feel like that brought so much personality to their brand and was absolutely hilarious. Like they don't take themselves too seriously. Like I think that worked really well for them. And so, yeah, often big brands, you know, can do it in a really good way. But again, it's like specific to what the brand is. I think like for some brands, that trend just wouldn't work at all. And everyone would be like, oh, this feels like wrong. So yeah, that is the thing with all of this small business stuff. And I'm sure you like find this with your members and when you share with them, you know, like there isn't a one size fits all. So I can't say to you the right thing to do is not to follow trends, because for some people it's going to work brilliantly. I think going back to the sort of personal brand aspect of it, I do think that there is something in originality. Like the way content is going with AI as well is that we're just seeing a lot more sameness, you know, like everything's kind of merging into one. And I think actually in the past where maybe jumping on a trend made you stand out, I think it actually now makes you blend in and be a bit beige. Whereas if you are creating something that's completely unique, like your own style of editing, your own way of like delivering content, like actually that's going to make you stand out more. So I think that is an argument for just actually not bothering with trends, ignoring them, and kind of like holding your own and being like, no, this is how I'm going to make content and this is how I'm going to sort of like move forward. And it might take a while for people to notice and for that to stand out to people. But I think as things progress, eventually it will, because so many people are like jumping on the trend.
Yeah, and I think sort of simplifying it right back to what you started by saying is it's almost like, is it fun and does it meet your goals? Because even if it meets your goals, but you despise doing it, then
don't do it. Yeah.
Yeah. And like you said, like, and that was never the aim of this, is to go like, oh yeah, do jump on trends or don't jump on trends. But I think it's a really interesting conversation to have, just because so much of the people that I speak to feel like they have to, and it's like they don't have to.
No.
Actually, like I have people come to me and say like, I need to post more reels, so how can I do that? And it's like, okay, one of my first questions is like, why do you need to, and do you want to? And it's, some people I'll be saying to, you're not posting anything at the moment, so jumping straight into reels is quite like, if you love videos and all that kind of stuff, great, but if you're going to hate it, you're either going to get some stuff out there and stop really quickly, or take so long trying to do the thing you're trying to do that it never gets anywhere. I think that, like, in real simple terms, it's like, is it fun? Because if it's not, don't worry. And even like sometimes, like you said, like, fun is a goal in itself. So it's just like, did the trend make you laugh and you wanted to do it? It doesn't even have to have had an impact other than you just enjoyed creating.
Yeah, totally. And I do think that like, if you don't enjoy doing something, it's really hard to do it consistently. Like, I don't know about you, but like, I put off doing my accounts because that's not fun to me. And I find it really hard to like keep up with it consistently. Obviously, I still have to do them. But like, there's a lot of things where you don't have to do them. And so if you don't enjoy them, it's going to be really hard for you to show up, in the way that you want to. And it's going to be really hard to like keep it going. Like, I've definitely seen this, for example, with having a podcast. I really enjoy doing it. Like, I love the process, and that makes it so much easier for me to show up consistently. If I was doing it because I felt like I should do it because everybody else was doing it, then I would just really resent it and I would really struggle to do it. So I think, it's like that Venn diagram, isn't it? It's like having those circles of like, what do you enjoy doing and that you want to invest your time in? And then what do your audience want to see? Like, what do they enjoy? And it's kind of trying to find this like nice sweet spot in the middle where you're kind of like ticking both of those boxes. And I've seen people grow I have a friend who's grown an incredible personal brand, and I don't think she's posted a single reel, or maybe she's posted one. So like, you can find ways around it, or you can find ways to do it in a way that you enjoy. So if the thought of doing a trend is like absolutely appalling to you, like, this is your permission slip that you don't have to do them. It's not a vital part of like growing your business. And in some instances it might actually be negative, and so you just have to work out what's the right fit for you.
I actually think that's just a really good like overall mantra or approach to running a business, isn't it? Is remembering that you run your business and you get to decide what you do. Like, I've even had conversations, and obviously I do social media marketing, but with people saying to me, I hate Instagram. I'm like, well, don't go on it then. Like, find a different way. You don't have to go on Instagram. You don't have to be on social media if you don't want to, but do, like, exactly like you said earlier, like, think about your goals. And if social media helps that, maybe let's find a way that it can work for you, or you might like it. But actually, lots of people will say to you, oh, then, and the next thing you need is a podcast. Or they might say like, and now what you really need is some recurring income. So have a membership. Like, that was, and obviously I have got a membership, but that was a thing that I heard like a few years ago. And obviously I've got a membership and I've got a podcast, but they're both really hard work, but I love them. And I quite often say to people, I've had lots of people specifically with a membership going, I think possibly because it's like, oh my God, look, she's set this up and it just looks dead easy because you have to rock up to a couple of calls. And I've had chats with people where I'm like, do you know what? I love it. So it's one of the best things I did for my business, as is the podcast, but it's because I love doing it. If I didn't love doing it, it's actually really hard work. Like, it's or I can outsource the bits of it that I don't enjoy, but that costs a lot of money. So, you need to think about different things like that. So I think it kind of, is just an approach to business, isn't it? Is remembering, like, I always use the example, and I am going to teach myself to at least like it, but I'm still not particularly active on LinkedIn because I just don't enjoy LinkedIn.
Same. I have aspirations and I can see the benefit, but I see so much nonsense on there. Like, I don't really, okay, this is interesting. So I think that often if you don't enjoy consuming content from a platform, it's really hard to create content for a platform. And I've experienced a shift in this recently because I, for years, have been saying that I wanted to create YouTube content, but I never consumed YouTube content. And so I was doing it because I felt like I should do it and I should like it. But interestingly, over the summer, I started watching vlogs and I started like consuming content on YouTube, and I actually kind of fell in love with it. And so I've now, it's made it so, the shift, there's been a huge shift where I'm like, I really enjoy making content for YouTube. And so now I'm like, okay, actually, maybe I could do this more consistently, because I've started to enjoy it as a platform, whereas before I didn't. And yeah, I mean, I'm the same as you with LinkedIn. I don't really enjoy consuming content there. So it feels like a very unnatural platform for me to create content for, even though I should, in inverted commas, do it. But I think the thing that you have to remember as a small business owner in particular is like, you can't show up for every platform like with the same capacity. Like you'd be making content 100% of your time if you were like posting consistently on everything. So yeah, choose the bits that work for you. Ideally, there's going to be some link with like where your audience likes to consume content, and your clients or your customers, hopefully that is the case. Yeah, like I think joy has to be a huge part of it, because it's really hard to do things that you don't enjoy.
Yeah, and that's it, isn't it? And there are other ways to achieve the same goal. Or like with LinkedIn, for me, it's like, right, okay, well, do what? Because I love Instagram, so I don't have to do that with Instagram. But it is what I teach a lot of people. Okay, well, let's make this work for you if it's really going to help. Like Threads is another one for me. And actually, it came from listening to your podcast episode. I cannot remember who it was with.
Fenny Day, I think it was.
Yeah. So, and I love that. And I was like, oh, actually, I don't need to, I still haven't actually done it. But she gave some really good tips in there of like how to approach Threads and what to post and that kind of stuff. And sometimes, like you said, either it's like, well, you don't have to do it, or consume it a bit more and see if you enjoy it, or just find ways to make it work for you. And then maybe if I started doing that over on Threads more, I might start enjoying it like a little bit more. Like it's just, and I do think, and I know lots of business experts would disagree with this, but it is that joy is the main thing, isn't it? Because I didn't like running your own business. It's a bit like with having a membership or a podcast or whatever it might be. It's hard work.
Yeah.
So if I'm not enjoying it, then what's the point?
Yeah. And I think, I think there's different ways that you can handle it. Because like you said, I have definitely outsource things that I don't enjoy, but I know that I kind of need them in my business. But also, I think there are ways that you can make it as easy as possible. And sort of going back to Hannah, like she has a whole membership about this, she talks a lot about 10-minute marketing and make things easy for yourself. And I think quite often we just need permission to make it as easy as possible for ourselves. And so like that could look like, if you don't enjoy posting on Instagram, like that could look like having a podcast and you just post clips, you repurpose and post, and you can get, like an AI tool that'll do that for you, or hire someone to do that for you, to Instagram. So at least you have a presence there and there's something there, but like you're not actually spending that much of your energy to get it up there. Or like, again with Threads, like maybe you put a transcript of this podcast episode into an AI tool and say, give me, 10 one-sentence highlights from the episode. And that's what you just schedule on Threads and then don't really think about it. I think sometimes we just need permission to do like the easiest version, to make our lives easier. I think we sort of think we have to do all of the things in all of the places, and I think we just need to give ourselves a break sometimes.
100%. And I think the permission thing is so important. And actually, I think that's probably the essence of why I reached out to you about this conversation. It wasn't for us to turn around and go, you should do this, that, or the other with trends. Yeah. But it's like, listen to an alternative conversation about it that might make you think, or give you permission to go, actually, do you know what? I don't need to do any of that.
Yeah, totally.
Actually, I mean, well, I was going to say it's a bit of a shameless plug, but it is my podcast. But that I'm just about to launch a free challenge, because I've been seeing a lot of people over the last few months basically saying they hate Instagram and they're moving off Instagram and they're never going on Instagram again. And I have just taken the summer off work and I deleted the social media apps from my phone. Oh my God, it was like a revelation. And I do, a bit like you said, yeah, I could find other ways to market my business. I'm not going to say I do need social media for my business, to be fair, because that's what I do. But it's like, okay, well, when I'm back at work, I need to re-download those. But what I learned over the summer is like, I was able to delete them because I had systems set up and whatever to still be present on socials, just not as actively. But had I not needed to re-download it for my business, I'd have stayed off it for way longer, because I just felt so much calmer. And nothing even really to do with business, more just personal life and mum life and the chaos that like can consume you when you're on social media a lot. So, and then alongside that, I was seeing lots of people basically saying, I hate Instagram. And I was getting really frustrated because I was like, it's not an either or. You don't have to either have it and go all singing, all dancing into it and do all the things people tell you to do, or delete it completely. Like there's ways to find it for you. So this challenge is, now, see, this is where it's off the cuff. I can't remember the name of it, but it's basically like how to use Instagram and not let it take over your life, like make it work for you.
Yeah.
And these are the steps I take to do that. Because actually, even as somebody who loves Instagram, since coming back from the summer, one of my main social media goals is now going to be to spend as little time on it as possible, because I've got other things I want to do in my business. Like I've wanted to be on Pinterest for ages, to do various different things with that. And I just haven't got the time. So it's like, actually, like this challenge is basically going to be Instagram or whatever it might be is a tool for your business. So let's figure out a way. And, the people that take part in that challenge, I could do it, you could do it, someone else could do it, and all come out with completely different outcomes from it. Because the idea is like, okay, well, I won't go into it all now. I'll put a link into show notes actually to go and check out more about it. But that is kind of that's all come from me going, do you know what? Even I want to spend less time on Instagram, and I love Instagram.
Yeah, I love that as a goal, because I think that's such a legitimate goal, like to spend less time doing something that you can enjoy but acknowledge is maybe not the healthiest for you, or you haven't had like the healthiest relationship with it. And I think like that is the thing that's difficult about social media. I think and like bringing that back to the trends, like the amount of content we consume on social media is a lot. And so I think it for small business owners, it keeps coming back to like, what is the best use of your time? Your time is limited. So like you need to be as intentional with it as possible. And I say this as someone who has not mastered this at all. And like the thought of deleting social media apps from my phone for the summer, like literally terrifies me, which means that I probably definitely should do it. But I think, I think that's it. Like our goals are all going to be different. And I think you can have a goal that is like that. How do I show up on Instagram in as little time as possible? And you can come up with processes and systems that allow you to do that. It's like what your priorities are and how things are impacting your life. And it is going to be different for everybody. And so, like that comes back to the whole, there isn't one size fits all. And it is what you enjoy doing. And I do know people who they love creating content around trends. Like that is literally or like they do all these amazing transitions. They put, they're really creative with it. They put their own spin on it. And they've grown a big social media following as a result. I think you see this a lot with like lifestyle influencers. I think trends make a lot more sense for them because often, it's just about growing your audience so that they can have like brand collaborations. And, trends can be a really good way to do that if people find them and find them funny and entertain. I think trends can often be very entertaining. And so if that is your goal, then great. But I think like that's why I think it's so good to work out what your goal is, because for some people it's going to look very different.
Well, and make yourself question because that's basically what the challenge is hopefully going to do, is walk people through the questions they need to ask, the processes and systems they might want in place for it. Because it's just like my goal is to spend as little time as possible on it while still getting the results I want from it.
Yeah.
So, nice. And that's where I think, like if you are going to turn around and say, one of the things I want is to grow my personal brand and get in front of more, then you are going to have to, well, again, I'm not going to say you have to, but it will help if you spend more time on it. But then actually let's look at how much time that is. If actually what social media is doing for you is just giving you a consistent presence. So when you said, the idea of deleting my social media apps, I didn't actually go into the summer planning to do that. But I'd been off for about 3 days and I went on social media and literally, I can't even remember what it was I saw, but I don't even think it was business related. I think it was personal. And I think my eyes like rolled to the back of my head and I was like, oh God. And it was real negative. And I always question myself on that because I'm like, that's not about what I've just seen. That's 100% about how I'm feeling. And I was feeling quite emotional, like various different things had gone on. I was feeling quite emotionally burned out. And I was like, do you know what? I actually think like I'm not working right now. So where I'm always sort of a bit martyrish about, well, I need social media because I have to do this, that and the other. Like I don't. And I thought I'd really struggle with it. after about a week, I was, and this is one of those where I could do the post of the things I learned from like not having social media over the summer. But genuinely, one of the things I learned was I quickly like lost, I didn't find it as hard as I thought I'd find it. And it was really, really nice. And one of the things that I've done since coming back and re-downloading the apps is I've deleted the apps off my home screen and put them behind like a little bit of a passcode type thing. So I have to like basically go and search for it in the back end of my phone and then open it and whatever. And it just gives me a bit of time to go. Like basically, I'm not doing it out of habit anymore because I've actively got to go and look for it.
I was going to say it's breaking that habit, isn't it? Because I remember I have in the past, I think I deleted it for 2 weeks once. And what was really alarming to me was how muscle memory, every time I opened my phone, I just automatically went there. Like I wasn't thinking, oh, I must go check Instagram. My body was just doing it with no thought behind it. And I think that, isn't it? It's breaking out of those sort of habits and being...
And it's quite scary, isn't it? Because one of the things, in the first few days of me deleting it, I'd pick up my phone and go, what am I meant to do with this?
Yeah. Oh, it's fascinating.
All of a sudden, I was picking my phone up less. It wasn't even necessarily about going on social media. Like, and it sounds very sort of like, you can all be more like me and not, but it's actually quite frightening when you think about how much you pick it up out of habit and then how much time you lose by picking it up out of habit because you've suddenly spent half an hour looking at something or, you know, whatever it might be. Although me and my husband did have a bit of a joke about it because in the first few days of me deleting it, I spent a fortune on online shopping.
Just redirected your...
It's like, I've got to go somewhere. But yeah, so now, like, and basically I was just thinking about that over the summer, and obviously we have gone on a bit of a tangent again, but it was like, right, when I come back, I need to think about how I can use it, not just completely delete it from my life, because actually I really like it and I get a lot from it, but how I can use it more healthily.
Yeah.
And I did put an out of office. One of our sort of mutual friends, Biz Paul, sent me a message over the summer and got like an auto response saying, you know, like I've basically whatever it said, I've deleted the apps from my phone, but I'll be back if it's urgent, blah, blah, blah. And I got a response back going, ugh, people with boundaries.
That's so Paul.
Yeah, it is like now that's what I'm doing, and that's why I've set up this challenge is like actually I'm almost going to be doing the challenge myself to start from scratch and go, right, what do I need to put in place, how much time do I actually want to spend on it and all that kind of stuff. And I think that all flows on from what we said about the trends of like when you lose the joy from it and possibly because you're spending too long on it or you've got unhealthy habits with it, what can you do to address that?
Totally. I think that I want to just jump back to something that you said earlier, which I thought was really good, because I think this whole idea that there are such a variety of different goals is really helpful. And one of the goals that you referenced was like, if you just want to get better at something, and like you're talking about your challenge, and I did a challenge with Hannah again once, like it was a couple of years ago now, where we committed to doing a reel a day for a month. And with that, like a lot of the reels weren't particularly good, weren't particularly beneficial for my business. Like they didn't necessarily have that much strategy behind them. But the whole goal was to get better at making video and learning like when. And so I do think there is a scenario where actually maybe, you know, looking for trends and doing them is a way that you can learn to make video in an almost like easier way because someone else has set the parameters. I think you referenced this earlier, you know, someone's made a template, someone's set the parameters. Like you don't have to like come up with the concept from scratch, but it gets you in the habit of like creating videos. And so, yeah, again, I think it just comes back to like, what do you want to achieve with this? And it doesn't really matter if someone else doesn't understand what your goal is. Like it's your goal, you know, like if someone is looking at you and thinking, well, I don't understand why she, you know, hosts a membership about social media and she's trying to go on it less, like that doesn't matter because it's your goal and it's what's important to you. And I think that's it. That's what I love about running a small business, is that I get to build it how I want to, you know, that works best for me as a person, and that is going to look different from other people. And you know, you might get some criticism for it, which is hard, but if you really believe in what you're doing and you know why you've done it, it's so much easier to just brush that criticism off because you're like, well, actually, yeah, I jumped on this trend for this specific reason, which is I want to get better at video, or, you know, I did this or that. And I think it's like making those decisions and then just owning it and having the confidence with it.
Yeah, definitely. And like you said, like me going on and saying I want one of my goals to spend as little time on it as possible. I know, and I've heard people say in the past, like, well, that's a terrible thing for a social media marketer to be saying because that's literally their business. And it's like, well, like, and I can already imagine, to be fair, lots of people probably won't even care, but imagine some of the comments or whatever. But actually, I think it's more powerful me saying as a social media marketer, like, this is a tool for your business. Like, I've heard people say, oh, if you do social media marketing, don't go on moaning about social media. And there's a balance with that, because obviously if I'm constantly going, oh my God, social media is awful, it's not great. But it's like, actually, I'm also human. And that's one of the things, like I said at the start of the podcast, I really love about your content is that it's just like, I think you normalize a lot of the, like, possibly without even necessarily intending to sometimes, but the conversations that we all feel, but people just won't have because they feel like they should. And it's like, do you know what? I am a busy woman, a busy mum, a busy business owner. I can't be on social media all day. So that's a legitimate goal. And the people that will think negatively about that aren't the people that I'm actually trying to reach and speak to anyway. And they're not the people that are, potentially going to listen to the podcast or, join the membership or whatever it might be.
Yeah. And that's where it comes back to, like, through those decisions that you're making, you're showing your values, and that will attract people who share the same values and sort of put off the people that don't. And that's ideal. That's like what you want for your business. Yeah. And, like, again, that's kind of the same with trends. Like, is this trend going to attract the sort of people that you want to your business? And I think this is where it can go wrong for your business, where you follow a trend and you go viral and you attract a load of followers, but are those followers actually interested in you and your business, or are they just interested in that one video that you posted that happened to go viral because of a trend? And I think that, like, I went viral, it wasn't a trend, but I went viral a few years ago on TikTok, and I got loads of followers, but like nothing, I wasn't set up for it. So like nothing beneficial happened from it. And it didn't attract the sort of people who were going to hire me to design their branding. So like it didn't really have any impact like on my business at all. Whereas I know other people who went viral at a time where they, like, their business was well set up for it, and they got loads of client inquiries, and it completely transformed their business. So yeah, I mean, that's not specifically about trends. It's more about going viral. And this is the thing.
Any thoughts on that as well?
Yeah. And like, it's all like linked together. And I think this is the thing with it is it's just trying to go into it with a bit more of a plan rather than just, I'll just, wing it. I mean, I spend a lot of my time just winging it and see what happens. And I think sometimes that can be really fun and creative, like just try things and see what happens. But yeah, I guess all of this, comes back to, there's never one size fits all, and you get to make those decisions, which actually is an amazing aspect of running your own business.
Yeah, 100%. And what you were just saying then, I'm conscious of time, so I will stop talking soon, but I literally talk to you. I say this all the time at the end of episodes, and I feel like I'm just saying it.
No, I'm the same. And then I'm like, maybe the common thread is here that I just like to talk all the time.
Yes. So one of the things I was going to say that you were just saying, and it was actually you that not necessarily that I learned this from, but like it was your talk talking about Paul earlier, his conference on rejection and embracing rejection, that actually if you've got your brand right, you should repel certain people. And, with this challenge, it should repel certain people. And those aren't the people that I want doing the challenge. So I think there's a lot of that in there, isn't it? It's like, and I think sometimes when, I spoke earlier about posting for the sake of just getting better at something or more confident in posting, it helps you get more confident with that potential rejection, which actually happens very, very little. Like I say, I can imagine people would say this. Actually, most people literally aren't going to care that I'm doing this challenge if it's not aimed at them.
Yeah.
But a lot of that talk that you did on rejection was so powerful for me, because it was like, actually, yeah, it's like when you flip that into it being a good thing.
Yeah, and when you flip that into actually means your brand is working, like it's doing the work that it's supposed to do, it takes it from this like negative thing to this positive thing, which, yeah, is really helpful. Definitely.
Right, I am going to, just because otherwise I will end up talking to you. It's going to be like a real podcast. There are a couple of questions I normally ask at the end. I think we've kind of covered some of them, but I'm going to ask them anyway, just in case you have anything different to say, or if you just want to reiterate something you've already said. What things help you show up in your business, and what tips would you give someone else to do the same if they're feeling like a little bit overwhelmed or unsure about it?
I think for me, working out like the right level of discomfort has been helpful. So there's obviously like a certain level of staying safe. So it's like, do I feel safe doing this thing? Can I push myself a little bit to do something that's uncomfortable? And I think that has really helped me with showing up, because we don't always feel like showing up. You know, sometimes you get asked to do something and it feels a bit scary, and it's knowing whether that's like the right amounts of scary and stretchy, or whether that's oh no, okay, that's maybe for like a few years down the line. So I think that's really helped me, like just this idea of actually it's okay if it feels a bit uncomfortable, like that's normal and that's part of growth. So getting used to the discomfort has helped me with showing up. And I think just like surrounding myself with like cheerleaders, you know, like having other, like you must get this in the membership loads where you're there like cheering them on, encouraging them, like actually having those people who, when you have a little wobble, are going to be like, no, keep going, like you're doing the right thing, like this is my outside perception on what you're doing. And then you're like, okay, like even just today, like you saying things that have encouraged you about my content, like I think those sort of things, like okay, that's a little boost to like keep showing up, and like it is helping people. So yeah, I think discomfort and the people you surround yourself with are my two things that help me.
Yeah, and do you know what, that's interesting on the point of, because obviously we've spoken a lot about like joy, but it's like sometimes I have to remind myself, like sometimes things don't bring me joy, but that's because I need to push through the discomfort.
Yeah. And the next time it'll be more joyful, because you'll know that you can do it and you'll be used to it. Yeah, totally. I think that's it, isn't it? It's like we're not going to experience joy 100% of the time in our business. I think it's having that wisdom of like, okay, when am I pursuing joy? When am I pursuing discomfort? Like, what's the right level?
Also, what you actually said about my comments on your content, like there'll be things that I've said to you in the past. Like I know I've spoken to you before about the impact that your talk at that conference had. Like loads of the things I've said today, I'd probably never have mentioned to you because they're not necessarily like, it'd be a bit weird if I messaged. I mean, probably actually I should do it more, but I message you every time going, you're so amazing, Liz.
I'll take it.
But it's also remembering that you are having impact. Like a lot of the time people aren't going to be telling you that because that's just not the way, you know,
we work.
Totally. So I love that. And the second or final, well, the final question of where can people find you? What advice would you go back and give yourself in the early days of running your business? Which again, I feel like we've sort of not directly covered, but yeah, what advice would you give yourself?
Oh my goodness, there's so many things. I need to think of one thing to pick. I think I would reiterate what we talked about actually, which is like the joy aspect of it. It's like it's okay for it to be fun, like it's good for it to be fun. And actually that leads me nicely to I think what my actual answer is, which I really like having an attitude of like experimenting in my business. So going into like, I think one of the things I really had to work on is like separating my self-worth from my business. And the way I've done that a bit is to think of it more like an experiment. So like just try things, see if they're fun, see if they work, see if they don't, and have a very like a much more sort of like data head instead of emotional head, you know, whereas like, okay, I tried this thing, it didn't work, no one bought it, what am I going to learn from that? And, you know, and how am I going to move on? And when I like reframed it in that way with like, this is an experiment, like it's much easier to then not tell my story, like self a story of like, well, no one bought it, so that means I am terrible at what I do. I can go into it and be like, okay, well, no one bought it, that's interesting, you know, like what can I improve for next time? So I think, yeah, like accepting that it's okay to pursue joy in your business, and also looking at it as an experiment that you're constantly learning from.
Amazing. What a lovely way to end the podcast as well. So I do want to ask, obviously, where can people find you? And also if there's anything you want to share, like the people listening to this might find helpful. I feel like I do want to give a shout out to your, and I know you did have, and I'm hoping you still have, now I'm saying this, a free download on your rejection challenge as well.
Yes, I've got a few different things.
Me. So yeah, if you want to share any of that.
Yeah, so you can find me on like social media. I'm at Liz Mosley. My podcast is called Building Your Brand, and there's like a website with that, which is buildingyourbrand.net. And then with the rejection challenge, I've got a few different things. So there's a freebie, which is like a Trello board that you can use to document your rejections if you want to do like a challenge yourself. I've also created like a low cost digital product, which basically gives you like 30 prompts of things to get like to pitch for, to get rejected for. And then I've got a sticker chart, which is like, that was like the epitome of like joy in my business. I was like, you know what? I just want to make something fun. I'm going to make myself a sticker chart. So you can basically, like, if you want to do the rejection challenge, you can stick a smiley sticker every time you get rejected. So yeah, I can send you links to all of those so you can put them in the show notes.
That would be amazing. And yeah, like I said, that was just something that had a huge impact on me. And I will also say, if you're sitting there thinking like, oh, you don't use Trello or whatever, I took that and put it into my Asana.
Oh yeah, exactly. You can move it to whatever you want. It's just to give you, exactly, the template.
It's a bit of a template, doesn't it? And to approach it. But yeah, that was a really powerful thing that I did. So I do highly recommend that. But thank you so much for your time today. And thank you for joining me on the podcast.
Amazing. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for tuning in. I am really grateful you chose to spend your time here. Before you go, if you love this podcast and you're a woman running a small business who wants to make social media easier and business life less lonely, I've got something for you. The Boss Your Socials Club is here to bring you inspiration, accountability, confidence and community. It's a place where we ban the word should because we believe in bespoke advice that will work for you, your stage of life and your business. You'll get a monthly content plan, ready-to-use templates, accountability and action sessions, a private members podcast, expert support, and a brilliant community of women who get it. It's like having a mini social media expert in your pocket so you can show up with confidence without the overwhelm. Membership starts at just £24 a month, and there's a pro tier if you want even more support. Thanks again for listening, and I will see you next time.